Does anyone else find the shift from new and original ideas to recycling old content extremely bizarre in the movie industry? Like, isn't it weird how in probably the most expressive form of media, we're just recycling old ideas and, honestly, regularly not as well as they were previously done? I think Disney is largely at fault for this. You know, I mean, they made Star Wars Episode 7, which was pretty much just the original 3, but again, which, to be fair, is a pretty good starting point, I guess, for a new trilogy, but I've heard that also goes off the rails. I don't like Star Wars, so, like, it's whatever, but I've heard that. I've heard the new Star Wars trilogy isn't very good anyway. But Disney are huge culprits in regards to this, with how they're remaking all their classic 2D animated Disney films in 3D and in CG. What? Like, what? I hate these live-action remakes. Beauty and the Beast came out, and I'll say this, Beauty and the Beast is possibly the best I've seen of an old film remade in a new medium, but it's still, like, not great. I think the weirdest part about Beauty and the Beast is that, like, the redesigns of all of the clocks and stuff, they suck. They suck. They look awful. Compared to the 2D versions, the 2D versions are so charming. The 3D versions are so boring to look at, and they honestly are kind of freaky. I think if you saw any of them in real life, you'd scream, because they look... I mean, to be fair, you'd probably say the same about the original as well if you saw them in real life. But especially the remake, I think you would just probably faint on the spot. They look awful. They look horrifying. They're not friendly at all. They're not interesting. I don't know what happened there. But what I find most baffling about the Beauty and the Beast movie is that the best part of the film is, like, one of the only new scenes they made. Because throughout the whole thing, you're always met with this weird sense of familiarity, but it just feels like it's kind of a gross familiarity. Like, you're like, oh, I remember this. I preferred it before, but I remember this. But then you get to a scene which has the song Evermore, which essentially has the Beast scaling the tower of the castle, overlooking Belle. And it's super weird, because it's fantastic. It's a really good scene. It's not only interesting visually, because you get to see, like, him as he slowly ascends, looking out all these possible avenues to see her as she slowly gets obstructed by different things in the background. It really shows how much he cares for it. The song is fantastic. The editing is great. Everything about it is a terrific scene. And when you really break it down, you go, this is the only new thing this movie did? Like, well, that just shows if they had just done something else, it probably would have been better. And that's what's always weird to me, is that these movies go for a remake as opposed to a retelling. You know, you could do a retelling of a film. If someone was like, hey, I've got an idea for Finding Nemo, but it's literally completely different. It's just based on the initial premise. That could be, you know, you'd say go for it, right? Like, you'd show me your script, show me what you got. I mean, like, that's interesting. It's a different spin on something that we already had. What is the point of getting hey, I made the same movie, but this time it looks a little bit worse? Oh yeah, dude. Let me buy that. Like, who cares? I can't believe that everyone is so accepting of these weird live-action remakes, especially when they're doing it to Lion King, which is probably, like, the most recognizable, traditionally 2D animated movie ever. They're doing it with Mulan as well, and I would say Mulan is a huge issue as well, but Lion King especially, that is the go-to. People are like, oh, 2D animation? Like, oh, you mean Lion King? That is the movie you go to. You go, oh, you know, like Lion King? It's kind of like how if people go, oh, you know, 3D puppet-based animation, someone's going to say Toy Story. Someone will most likely say Toy Story. Like, oh, you mean the toys? Because that's just like the go-to example. That is a really excellent example of the animation. Lion King is traditional 2D animation on the big screen. That's what it is. So the fact that they're going, we'll take that and make it live action with CG, like, what are you doing? Way to take away all the charm and just completely take away possibly the most important part of this whole field of film history and completely scrap it for potentially some money for a movie when he could have just made something else that would probably do well as well. Now, granted, Lion King just does have enough of a reach, but in that case, why not just, buy a new... Why not just buy the equipment to make a new Lion King movie? Like, an actual new one. Like, why not, right? Isn't it better? Like, you always see all these people going, oh, sequels. Isn't a sequel way better than a remake is? Like, I'm sure people would shell out big money if you said there was a new installment in the Lion King series and it had traditional 2D animation. I know people will say it's expensive. CG live action is not cheap. I don't know why people think it's cheap. It's definitely not as expensive. But if you factor in the fact that CG in live action also has to include an all-star cast, prices inflate. Actors are super important. With a hand-drawn animation, you just need to get good singers. You can get random actors that do fantastic jobs because you don't need famous actors in your animation. So, yeah, sure, the visual budget is definitely going to increase, but every other thing falls. And I don't understand why. I can't think of a reason. The only reason is because 3D and CG is more marketable. But even then, I feel like 2D is so pushed to the wayside and ignored nowadays that it actually wouldn't be. Because every time you see something it's like, oh, it's in 2D again, people go, what? People are thrilled by that. Teen Titans Go to the Movies, possibly an extremely ignored film 10 years ago. If that came out 10 years ago, no one would care. Because it's a show that many people don't like, that had a good movie. It's a good movie, but no one would care if it was in a different time period. The only reason people care is because it's a 2D animated movie now. That's it. It's a 2D animated movie that came out right now. And that's the only reason people saw it. And it did well. There's a market for 2D. People will watch your 2D movie just because it's 2D. Seriously, I don't understand this whole emphasis of, we need to make it all CG. It just looks worse, it's lifeless, and it's boring.